Welcome to the Tampa Fishing Outfitters Live Fishing Report. Got the whole crew again tonight, all four.
Stacked house.
Got Captain Rick Liles, Captain Travis Yaeckel, Captain Jason Prieto, and myself, and we're going to be talking scrimp.
Scrimps.
We're going to be talking
the scrimp.
Which I know we've all had in our live wells, you know, probably for the last week or so.
Yeah.
Longer.
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. I mean, I've had shrimp. I mean, we haven't used them as much as
I had the bucket of shrimp, and it was surrounded by whitebait the other day. But
there you go.
Well, you know, we decided to do a show on shrimp because, you know, there's a lot of guys, and this isn't guide talk. There's a lot of guys and a lot of anglers that aren't making the trek to go find bait. You know, whether it's the size of the boat they're running, whether, you know, they're just not comfortable going out trying to cast net bait, you know, in certain conditions and stuff like that. Us as guides, I mean, we try to, if it's available, we'll try to go get it. You know what I mean? But we thought it would be kind of unique. It's that time of year where a lot of anglers set out with a live well full or a bucket full of shrimp. So
listen, I can tell you right now, guide or recreational or whatever you are, if you're in the northern part of the bay where I've been the last week, you're more than likely fishing with shrimp, and you don't have a choice in the matter.
Right.
So.
Shrimp's a good bait.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it's to me the big transition or what's hard when you go from shrimp is going from whitebait to shrimp. It goes from kind of fast-paced stuff happening, bait hitting chum. You know, there's a lot to shrimp. Cast it and sit. Now it works. It's just to me it goes from just fast-paced to almost boring until you catch fish.
Yeah.
The whole presentation is kind of slow and boring. But
well, and I think when you follow the pace of the fish, like, and that's sort of how I will kind of look at it is if the fishing feeding pace is slow, then a lot of times, you know, I'll go with more of a shrimp bite. If the fish are biting slow, then I'll use a bait that they normally eat slow.
Right.
And not want to chase down. And a shrimp is sort of one of those baits. Now, you talk about action, you talk about pace and all that. I can tell you, man, that when you get in the right area for trout, especially an area that's got moving current, and those fish you get in that natural feeding pattern where you're not firing buckets of whitebait at them, and those fish are just naturally feeding on the source, you can get a shrimp bite going not quite as good as what you may get with a whitebait bite by being able to chum the fish, but I can promise you that you can have some really good days and go through a live well full of shrimp. I just think it's, for me personally, that rapid bite, that real, you know, bang 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 bite is a tide thing. That's what it relates to is like that's when the shrimp are moving. You know, that's when the flush or when things are getting moved around. The other thing I want to say is night fishing. And we don't talk about it a ton on our show because a lot of us don't charter a ton at night. I run a few, here and there. But if you're a night fisherman, just like lobsters, shrimp move at night. And so it's a natural, bait for fish under dock lights, or if you're fishing edges and you're doing some night fishing, shrimp is a great choice. And sometimes a big snook under a dock light will take a shrimp over a live bait, a pilchard, greenback, pinfish,
I agree with that.
all of that. Sometimes they will take a live shrimp because those shrimp, if you've ever seen it naturally, those shrimp will get in the light and they'll do donuts in the light. And those snook are just naturally attracted to that, and that's a normal feeding, source for them. So there's several different times and situations where shrimp will outproduce a live bait. You know what I mean? It's a matter of just kind of knowing when to use it or when you may be a little more successful.
Travis, I'll let you take that question.
Yeah. So, you know what, Kevin, who we all know on the show, he's talking about hooking shrimp through the horn so they can move.
I have not.
So
I'm glad we're bringing comedy into this show.
That's right.
I'm just letting you know. You guys have been too serious lately.
So, Kevin, that's a great point, and I think what you're going to find here in our next segment is we actually brought in some live shrimp.
That's right.
We've got the gear. We're going to tie everything up. We're going to kind of show you how we rig shrimp for different situations. You're probably going to find that each of us are doing it differently, despite all fishing for the same species, generally in the same area,
Right.
doing the same thing. So, oh, Manny.
Oh,
Nothing to see here. Move along.
All right, so let's talk about, I've been out with shrimp. I'll kind of lead things off on my latest, what I've been doing for the past week. I ran, Friday, Saturday, and Tuesday.
woo!
Saturday, I had a few baits, never used them because my shrimp bite where I was at up north was not like you described, but more like you described. When you get them going, when that tide gets moving, yeah, I'm reading what you're saying.
He's trying to be professional.
Trying.
Me and Rick just don't care. We'll be on professionals.
But when those fish turn on,
don't
I
matter.
realize, and it's been a long time since I've seen that scenario, because last year throughout the winter, I was bait regularly, even up north there. This is the first time where I was like shrimp and shrimp
Right.
alone. And dude, when it turns on, it's just as exciting as it can be with white bait. If you're in the right spot at the right time.
It definitely works. It's just a kind of a 180-degree spin on white bait, I think. So it works. I catch a lot of small reds with the shrimp this time of year.
Oh yeah, lots of rat reds.
When you find them oyster bars in the river, in particular, that are holding reds, you catch a lot of them. Using cut bait, like Travis has said too, is a good option. But I tell you that the redfish bite, which kind of goes hand in hand with shrimp, lately has been good this year. I've caught more redfish this year than I typically do for whatever reason, but caught some decent ones.
I think, and I'm going to add to that because I've been seeing a lot of juvenile redfish around too. We've been catching a few here and there, but like in the tower, moving to different spots, I've seen quite a few smaller redfish, particularly on the edges, like close to the mangroves is where I've seen most of them on the incoming tides. But in saying that, I saw the same thing. And I'm like, man, I wonder what's different from like say last year and even the year before. But we've actually had some really good cold fronts, or not necessarily early, but earlier in the year as opposed to last year. And so I think that may have something to do with why some of these fish have sort of, at least in our area, have pushed in into these flats and up closer towards the river areas due to the water temperature. But I also feel like because that water temperature's dropped, they like hanging out on those flats because it hasn't plummeted. Like it's not freezing cold yet. And I know, get out on a flat and wade fish right now, you're going to catch some nice redfish.
Do you have waders on?
Across an area. What's that?
Do you going to have waders on when you do that?
I'd probably have waders on this time of
play
year.
around.
Just checking.
Yeah.
It's pretty cold. It was marking
It's-
57 yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, but here again, like redfish, they're just a lot more, a lot less sensitive than even the snook.
Yeah.
The trout, I think it's like the bigger trout, in my opinion, get up shallower even in the colder days. I think the larger aggregations of trout tend to get off in that deeper water where they feel a little more happy. But like you look at areas like North Carolina, Louisiana, Texas, those places get cold. So I mean the species itself can definitely, manage through a cold water
Absolutely, yeah,
situation.
they're used to it.
So
Yeah, the when you make that shrimp transition, it goes back to throwing artificials too. It's a confidence thing. Like my first couple trips with shrimp, usually it's like, God, I gotta change, switch gears, and then once you have a good day with them, you roll out the next day like, no big deal. For me at least, it's a confidence thing. It's like throwing artificials. You don't know. You pull the stuff out of the bag, you get the color that works, and it starts working for you, and then you get that confidence going out. It's the same with shrimp with me.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I've got to make the switch to shrimp if I can get out between the weather, and I'm kind of going in blind with it a little bit because I have been using, mixed whitebait, which I'm still surprised that I've gotten this week with these cold fronts. One thing that I found interesting this week is we had this brutal cold front that came through Sunday, I think.
Sunday into Monday.
So Sunday into Monday, it was
children's.
freezing.
You got to get in the children's section, John.
Yeah. But I was suspecting the water temperature to be a big drop, and it really wasn't. I was marking. Monday I didn't fish, but I had to run the sheriff's department's looking at getting a Pathfinder, so I took them for a quick run on Monday. They wanted to see how the boat was laid out and so on and so forth. But I dropped my boat off the lift, and it said 59, and I thought, man, that's pretty warm for the cold. I mean, it was 61 before the front,
right?
And so I thought it was warm. I was expecting like 54.
I saw 54 Thursday.
Did you?
Thursday.
Where were you at?
Of last
You were in the cold water runoff?
Oh yeah, okay. That was because Wednesday.
He's in the polar ice cap.
Yeah.
I was
54 in Cockroach.
When I
Really?
Tuesday, which
Wow.
was the day after that front, I marked the low I marked was 57, the high I marked was 64.
Yeah.
On Tuesday.
It was 57 when I ran out on Tuesday, but at the mouth of the bay it was 60, and it was
What I've noticed is all my bait runs, which you would expect, all the bait runs you're gonna get 2 or 3 degrees warmer at least. Like when you go to the bridge, or if you're gonna go to some markers, you're gonna see a few degrees warmer out there in that bay, bay water, and that's sort of what I've sort of like used as my baseline because eventually, because we've been fishing a lot of incoming tides.
Yeah.
So if you've got 60, 61 degree water, and let's say when I pull out of the marina it's 58, 57, I know in a few hours that water's going to warm up because all that bay water is coming in. Not to mention you get some sunshine, some shallow water, and so that's and we all do it, but we'll put those trips off till a 9:30, 10 o'clock pickup, in part to that reason. A lot of times when we go out in the morning, we'll post a picture saying it's 55, 56, whatever. A few hours later, you're sort of in a different scenario there, and saying that sort of alludes into what we're talking about today is that can make catching bait difficult, especially in the morning. If the opportunity to go catch bait, whether it's tide, weather conditions, whatever, is in the morning, and it's cold, and you miss the opportunity to get your bait or you can't get it because of other situations, a lot of times we got to go pick up, we got to do other stuff, or the conditions worsen throughout the day and you can't get to the area to catch bait. So using shrimp is an alternative this time of year that
I typically try to go with the hot bite, and going into to me that I always put winter for us is last 2 weeks of January, first 2 weeks of February. That's where we're getting pounded by cold fronts. And in them 2 weeks, I will do some flats fishing and it kind of depends. It's all based on water temperature, but rule of thumb is I start doing some stuff in the creeks and docks, get some redfish, maybe some trout in the deeper water, and then I drop off and I hit my ledges for sheep's head, because when it's cold like that, the water gets below that 58 number for me. The sheep's head bite, they're typically starting to spawn during that, so the sheep's head bite's really good, and everything else is kind of funneling in on that. So I always try to start doing my bottom fishing and mix it up a little bit, and it seems to work pretty good. The problem with that is where I do my sheep's head fishing is on ledges in the bay, so that doesn't work like tomorrow, like you just so that's when you got to make alternative plans. So it's a cooler time of year. I will tell you the cool thing is I've been out the last 2 days, and when you get out and you get on a good bite, you look around.
Nobody's around.
Nobody's out.
Yeah.
I tell my customers, I'm like, come during the off season. You'll get rooms cheaper. You'll get flights cheaper, and the fishing's good. You know, like September and January. January you have to watch the weather. Fishing's good, and there's not a lot of crowd.
Yeah.
So that's a selling point for me. And then I usually got more openings too, so I'm not killing myself. And it's just when you get on a good bite, either September, even beginning of October, beginning of December is a good month. Fishing's excellent.
Yeah.
And you get a little slow, and you're sitting there with decent weather, and you're going, man.
Fishing and decent
Yeah.
fishing.
So that.
Let's
but
get to that question you earmarked, Rick.
Yeah.
I know our screen went down here, but I think what Steven was asking was, we talked about shrimp at night and the snook activity at night. He's wondering this time of year,
this
how do
weather,
these cold fronts affect those snook? Does it shut them down?
Around dock
Around
lights.
docks, around dock lights. I think in the area, I think we can all attest, having fished a lot of the South Shore in our backgrounds and today, that we're fortunate enough to kind of be in that Apollo Beach area where
Right.
those dock lights have one advantage over other dock lights in the bay, and it's that warm water feed coming from the power plant.
True.
So the fish in that area, in that Apollo Beach area, I wouldn't say are affected as much. Elsewhere, they can be, but those docks are going to radiate a little bit of heat, and those lights are going to put off a little bit
They
of
do.
warmth.
They do.
What do you think?
The biggest thing about, and I used to do a lot of dock fishing at night, not so much anymore, but the biggest thing about dock fishing the lights is don't throw your bait in the light.
Right.
Throw your bait on the rim of the light or beyond and bring it through the light.
Mhm.
That's,
Yeah.
I have seen.
Now, why do you think? Is that
Because I've seen 30 snook disappear on the first bait that hits in the light.
Right.
And and that's one of the things that stinks about being a charter captain sometimes, is because the level of skill of the fishermen that you have, sometimes you'll have one person that is just off a little bit, and they'll
Ruin it for everybody.
for
a period. Those
because
fish are going to
they'll
come back.
come back, but that's important.
Mhm.
Don't throw it. If you got 9 snook up there huddled up, don't throw it right in the middle of them in that light.
No.
Throw it past it and slowly bring it through, and I promise you'll do better.
I've also found that around those edges, I tend to get the bigger fish.
The bigger fish are going to sit in the shadows.
Yeah, where
generally.
you can't really see them as clearly as you can as the fish in the lights, but they're smarter. They're in that dark area waiting for that prey to wash through.
100%.
Go back up. There was some.
There's a guy, and while you guys are looking that up, that's an incredible snook fisherman. Sort of made his name in snook fishing. Made his name in snook fishing at night. But
oh man, that's great.
who is that? Who is that?
Comment of the day, I think.
Who's it going to though?
The guy on the left side,
Jason?
made from the same mold I was. He's been working whatever he's got in his hand into the crack of that table the whole time. Split shot.
The split shots.
All right.
That is funny.
I'll just wait my turn to talk.
John Gunner, sheepside clean today, had lots of roe. It's coming.
But anyhow, Dave Pomerlow, Captain Dave Pomerlow, the Mad Snooker,
Man, snook.
is one guy who has snook figured out, particularly at night.
I'm that guy.
And one of his go-to baits I know is live shrimp.
Live shrimp, yep.
And he fishes exclusively at night. And, I'm not saying you're going to catch all the giants and everything like that, because there's obviously different techniques, but catching snook at night, shrimp is definitely a very good choice to use.
Yep.
So,
Well, let's get in. Let's take our break real quick. We've got a bucket full of live shrimp, guys. We're to answer some questions we've had for the last few weeks. We're going to get into some of the rigging techniques we do when we're out there fishing with live shrimp. So we'll see you on the other side, and take us to break. back, guys. We're getting set up. We've got, show them, Rick, what we've got there. We've got a bucket.
We got a bucket.
We got a bucket.
An old bait buster bucket,
Old
man.
bait
Look at that,
That's
baby.
when you know you've been on water a long time.
I've had that
When you've
bucket
been
a
on
long
bait buster.
time.
Y'all don't make them anymore?
We
There
make
they
them
are.
still, yeah, we still
Oh.
make them. But inside the bucket is what we're really going to get into. We've
That
got
was
some live
long
shrimp.
before the humpback.
Yeah.
Compliments of Apollo Beach, or bait and tackle of Apollo Beach.
Yep.
JC down there was kind enough to
Good old
hook us
JC.
up with that. If you guys are in the Apollo Beach area, he's always got fresh shrimp, man. Real good guy, real nice guy. We swung by and talked to him today, and he was more than happy to hook us up with some stuff to bring you guys to show you today. So
There was some cat in there when we picked him up was trying to shoot Jason with a flare gun. Though.
I think he had it aimed at
Really?
you.
was pretty funny.
That kind of got me a little unnerved
You
there.
ducked back. I hoped it was a blank. I didn't move a whole lot.
So y'all need a shrimp?
Yeah, well, I think what we want to do is
I'll hold
we're
the
gonna
camera.
Pay attention to questions here, because I think a lot of people are going to have some specific questions
Yeah.
about certain rigging situations. I think where we're going to start.
Who's gonna bite the tail off the shrimp?
Well, you do the camera, and I'll do the. I'll
do the
I'll make
comments?
sure. Well, I'll make sure that we got the questions covered.
All right, cool. I'll let Travis do the tie-in here.
You and Travis do the,
So
Doing
we're
the
going
time?
to start
the rig.
with.
Hold on. Let's get a little. That's what we got going on there.
Ooh, what do we got? It
Oh,
does.
hang on. Here.
Look at
Turn
that.
the bubbler back on.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
Look at that.
I love that sound.
Bubbler.
That bubbler sound. Do you prefer hooking through the horn or the tail? Ken, great question.
coming up,
All the
Right
above.
What do you want, a circle hook or a J hook?
I'm a
I'm
tail
gonna do
kind
a
of
J
guy.
hook.
You're
I'm
gonna
a
do
tail
J?
hooker.
Yep.
I'm a tail.
I'm a tail
And
hooker.
I'll explain why in a minute.
We're the comedians of this
Jason's
show.
a tail hooker.
I'm
Are you a tail hooker or a head hooker?
Yeah.
What do you prefer?
I'm a tail hooker.
Travis is a head hooker,
Tail
aren't you?
hooker.
You're a tail hooker? Oh wow. That's the first time.
Travis
Ever.
agree with anybody?
No, that's the first time ever
Oh.
we've all four.
No
Agree.
hand picks, Ken. These were kind of just the.
I tail hook just about
What was
every bait I
available.
use, man, with the exception of trout fishing. Sometimes with a cork, I'll nose hook them because they like to reel them in.
What do you
But-
got going on there? You didn't.
I'm rigging up.
Like a
I'm
you
kind
didn't
of rigging up the
pre-rig.
popping
You don't pre-rig
cork,
before your trips.
which is kind of the way. Actually, I kind of got this a little bit from you, Jason.
Don't you make fun of me for using them?
I do.
I've been using them this year. I'll tell you, the popping cork has been huge for my trout.
Popping cork Prieto.
Popping cork Prieto.
For me, it's a water clarity thing. When that water's super clear, I don't feel like they're as effective.
No,
In the
I-
spring they are.
For sure. You don't
but
even see them
you
on
know,
my
for
boat.
trout and like say 4 to 6 foot of water, I think they work great, especially with shrimp, because you know, like we talk about live chumming with whitebait, and you know, a big part
Did
of
I pull
trout
this
is
too early?
they'll
No.
they'll hear the other fish feed, you know, and they'll sort of come around. A lot of times you're catching trout, you're catching ladyfish too,
Right.
which I think helps you. So to kind of go over this one,
What's the
Cajun
best way to hook a
Thunder
dead
back
So,
bay.
Mickey, I mean, I would still say the tail if it's
Me
a
too.
whole frozen shrimp.
Turn that, Travis.
But
no.
if
there you
you're
go.
going to be using those frozen shrimp in pieces, then I want to make sure I hit the shell twice with the hook. That's just one tip I've picked up on, is I'm trying to hit the shell through it once, through it again if it's going to be dead, because it's probably not going to stay on the hook as well, like if you're using it for sheep's head.
so we talk about the popping cork, and
It's kind of a
what-
long leader, ain't it?
Oh, not really. This is about how
Yeah,
long I've been
starting
tying it. About say 30 inches, 36 inches or so is about where I start.
Jesus.
But you're fishing. I'm fishing in say, 4 feet of water, 4 to 6 foot of water. That's about how long I'm tying my
You
leader.
spool a reel with this.
I don't know about all that. But so what we end up doing is you tie your leader at the length that you want, right? And then we put another shot of leader at the top. This is a little long.
Oh,
But what
here
I
we
did
go.
was you're gonna tie this to your braid, about a foot or so up. You're gonna double uni this or whatever line to line knot you use, and what this does is it helps
With
not
the
let
tangles.
this leader get hung up around the top
Big
of the
time.
popping
It
cord.
doesn't stop it.
It doesn't stop it, but
But
it
it
definitely
helps.
helps.
Listen, it's a considerable difference because I can attest to that. I hadn't fished popping corks ever until this last.
You know what
Yeah.
works? You know what works even better? Go with like 40-pound.
Right, I was gonna
Yeah,
say if you got a little
something
bit thicker,
Yeah.
it's gonna keep this a little more stout.
You guys
Um,
turned me on to that, and it's made a world of difference.
It
we
does.
do.
It does.
That's what we
But so that's like the typical popping cork rig, and a point taken here is to add that extra little shot of leader up at the top before you go to the braid, and not tie the braid right to the barrel swivel on the popping cork. So once you got that rigged up, then you come down to your terminal end, which for me I like a number 1 J hook. I mean, that guy right there is the ticket for several reasons. A lot of times, for whatever reason, when you're fishing with shrimp, it seems like people are a lot more herky-jerky with the bait. Like, in other words, because it's not moving, because they know it's going to be a slow bite, they're sitting there waiting on that fish.
Yeah.
So any little bump they feel, as opposed to, say, fishing with a live bait, they'd let that go. You know, they go, oh, that's my bait. But as soon as they feel something move on that shrimp, they have a tendency to, to strike or to try to set the hook. And with a shrimp, I think you can do that because most of the time you're getting a bite.
Right.
And so particularly with, the sheep's head or even some of the trout, I'll start with J-hooks. If we start gutting fish, I'll back up and use a circle. But because people are a little more reactive, I tend to see that we do pretty good on J-hooks.
Especially with the core. See that thing bounce under and bam.
One more thing to note here is a lot of times what I'll do is I'll come in about 10 inches or so above this hook and add a split shot so that shrimp does go down, especially in the current. Sometimes if you're in a strong current, that shrimp will actually come back up to the surface, and the birds are just so bad right now that I've been having to put a split shot on this, and that's how I've been getting away from the birds. That's also why I've been using a little bit longer leader. So that's kind of the terminal setup there, and then the way
I thought you were going to dip the whole sleeve in.
I was going to go for it.
I've done it.
So I'm going to go with what I would pick out of this bucket here, which would be one of the bigger ones, and get me a lively one out of here. Try not to mess them up too bad. We'll just grab this guy because he's ready to roll.
You got to bite the tail off.
So what I like to do is
No?
come in here, and there's that last – you got it there? There's that last little piece in there of meat before you get to the tail, and I'll come right in under here and snap it in just like that.
Yep.
And that's how I tail hook my baits. And what you can see, I don't know if I can – leader's a little bit long, but when that shrimp pops – hang on, let me get that out of there. When that shrimp goes to popping underneath that cork, see that?
Oh, yeah.
Come on.
Put him on the table. Let him
When
crawl. Let him show.
When he goes to popping, though,
Come on, show out now.
it doesn't actually have to make a sound on the surface, but these beads on this popping cork,
Come on now.
any little bit of movement underneath
there
the
we go.
bottom
Woo,
there
yeah.
is going to trigger these
Like that.
marbles
Yeah.
or whatever these beads, and it's going to cause a little sound in the water, and these shrimp will. I mean, even without you popping the cork, is what I'm saying. The fish will come up and find these baits, and then what we'll do is every, say, 30 seconds or so,
Capt, we got a foul hook here.
give it a nice,
Fix
pop
that.
of the cork, just to let the fish know that there's something around. And then a lot of times when you pop the cork, you fire the shrimp back off, and he'll pop a couple times underneath the water.
Yeah, he kind of gets
And-
pulled back in.
Right. So that's what I would use, or what I've been using on the deeper water trout. The bigger the shrimp for me, the better. Because of the noise you get when they go to popping and they're extra live, you'll get a little more rattle down here on the cork, and I feel like that helps it just a little bit. So that's how I'm doing the popping cork stuff.
Okay.
That all makes sense to me.
Same
What do you
here.
guys?
No, that's. I
Rick,
don't.
you gonna
I don't
school
use,
us?
No, I don't use the popping corks like that, but that's the way I rig them. So.
So the difference. So you and I like to hook mine the exact same way. I don't see a lot of people do that.
I even free line.
Yeah.
That's the way I'll
Same way
go
I
with
free
it.
line.
Yeah.
My difference is when I'm not fishing a popping cork, the only other rig I like to make is the like we're fishing lately. I've been fishing in some deeper water where really those fish just aren't in that popping cork range, where I can't get to the strike zone if I've got one of these on there, unless I want to run a 6-foot leader and a split shot, and that's just not what I want to do. I want to get that shrimp on the bottom and kind of let him do his belly crawl. You mentioned you put that split shot on there. I do the same thing, but I'm rigging it to kind of stay on the bottom, and I'm putting that split shot in that probably 6 to 12-inch range right there, just enough so that split shot stays on, but he can still the shrimp can still make his movement on the bottom. And when you're in contact, when you're fishing up current and you're kind of washing that shrimp down to it, you can feel everything with that shrimp rigged this way. He's really got no resistance.
Give
He's
a little
crawling
break
along
there.
the bottom. Every little pinfish or little snapper that touches him, you feel that. And then when you feel that thump, right away.
Right. And just to kind of add to the whole.
Rick, No?
Go ahead.
No, agree with all that.
So we're not that different in how we rig shrimp.
No, I don't
Not
think
on how we
so.
The
rig
last
shrimp.
time we did something like this where we rigged
We were way different.
Baits.
Yeah.
every one of us were different, but
Yeah.
we all rigged the shrimp the same way.
Well, you can go through the head too. You just don't want to go through the black part. They die real fast.
Yep.
But this is like the most natural. They're gonna swim natural like that. They get that flick.
That's what I was gonna
When
say.
they
Is
flick,
if you've
they-
ever like caught lobsters,
Yeah,
or crustaceans, or
they-
crabs,
Where
they
you
never-
see it.
Use that tail to
when,
kick.
Yeah, but when they're in defense mode, they never go forward, right? They're always going backwards.
Sure.
Thing. They're trying to back them. That's the quickest way they can
Never
move.
take your eyes off the
Well,
end.
they
And
crawl
so-
forward.
Right.
Right.
Shrimp crawl forward
They
and
move,
they
but I'm
Put it
saying
back on the holder?
jet
when
back.
they need to get up out
Yeah.
the way, and so a shrimp that's in danger or is really active, they're moving backwards.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so like when we free line shrimp, like with a split shot, like what you're talking about,
Yeah.
a lot of times we'll throw it up current
Right.
and bring it, bounce it back down
towards you.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yep.
And it sort of looks like that shrimp is just naturally
Right.
trying to get
Yeah.
away from something, or
I'll do that too. I just like the advantage and is washing the shrimp to the the predators that are sitting up there with their face in that current. I can keep my clients in contact with that bait, and they feel it a little better than rather than coaching them to
Right.
pulling that slack line if you let it wash back to you. So for me, in those areas that I like to fish up there, which is a lot of creeks, big oyster bars, similar to Little Manatee, where it just works better that way.
Let's
for
hit
me.
some questions here real
Yeah.
quick.
Jace, I would. I've read
Jason's
that one.
question is: would it be better to fish the flats at Cockroach this weekend or the docks at Apollo Beach?
I'd go
Or
with
Apollo
docks.
during the day.
I would
Docks.
go with
Docks.
docks with shrimp. I think,
Docks.
Docks.
Yeah.
Docks.
yeah.
you got a lot of different fishing area and
Okay.
a lot of different fishing spots in a small area when you fish docks.
Yeah.
Here's a comment: we have a product designed to fill your bait well with fresh, clean, oxygenated water
Went on the move.
when on the move. Are you folks interested? Dead bait sucks. I'm
Uh,
not sure what that is.
is that called a live well pump?
Yeah, I got a pump that does that. I'm not
Maybe
sure.
a live well pump.
I'm trying to be smart, Alec, but I'm not
Use
sure.
protein.
Give us some more details.
Yeah,
on
give
that,
us.
Robert.
Just plug
Uh,
your product. We don't care. Let us know what it is.
That was a Prieto tip. That was that
Angles,
40-pound
still dance
top
it.
shot on the
Oh,
Yeah.
somebody listen to me.
Yeah.
Okay, I got my split
I
shots
just
again,
passed
by the
one
way.
Here. What'd that say?
Bill Dance it.
No,
Keep
Bill
going.
Dance it.
no. There's one there.
By the way, I saw that blooper video. That was
What is
awesome.
that?
I love it.
Brought me back
That
to being a
blooper video's
kid.
been around forever.
Oh, I know.
It
It brought me back to being a kid again.
I know. I seen it. I had to share it.
How do
It
you
never-
rig
it never
with a
gets
jig
old.
head? Good question. I was doing that Friday. We did some offshore snapper fishing. The difference for that, I don't happen to have a jig head right here, but I don't know how many of you guys. So for me, a lot of times I'll do the same thing here, Garrett, but come in a little bit further because generally with a jig head, you've got a little bit bigger bait on there, and I've found that if I keep the jig head
Boy, me and you, Nick.
rigged back here,
Nick, come on, man. We're trying to pump shrimp up here.
if we run like a jig head, let's say a half ounce, say you're offshore snapper fishing or something, and you run like a 4-aught hook through here, you've got a lot of places for the shrimp to foul up on the way down.
Yeah.
So I'll usually run it up, to the third one here, or enough so that just that jig head is right there. And a lot of times, and I don't know if you guys do this, we'll break this fan off and actually rig it on backwards. So instead of
Just like a soft plastic.
just like a soft plastic, and I know you can't see anything I'm doing here
Oh,
from this camera
man.
angle.
I was just going to give our disclaimer.
You take his tail off and turn him upside down, run that hook just through like that. Think of this as a jig head. Come out the back and slide him up, to where that lead is, and you're good to go. Just like that. So that's the other way you
We've
can
never done that.
Never done that?
No.
Yeah, I like doing that.
I like doing that when I'm fishing under the bushes.
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna fish shrimp and like get them up under the trees, pitch them up under the trees. That's a good way because you're gonna need a little bit of weight. Shrimp they're not heavy, and the other thing is shrimp don't move a whole lot.
Yeah.
So, you're not gonna be able to like throw it up short and let it swim up. You're gonna have to kind of put it where you want it, and you're working that area pretty, close. So a shrimp head or a jig head is a good way to get a shrimp to stay and cast a good ways if you're fishing potholes or up under the trees.
I'll tell you, a lot of guys say, shrimp is always a secondary option, and it is for me. But I've got a good buddy of mine that he'll go out and just on the summertime and fish shrimp. just for like a couple hours.
Just
And
'cause
he
he likes
fish
frustration.
No,
pinfish?
he will catch a ton of redfish in the summer, like
Sure.
to the point
Oh,
where he'll call me and say, "I got 9 redfish
Wow.
today," and
Must be
I
fishing the bushes.
yeah, he'll flip it under the
Yeah,
bushes,
100%.
and just let it
pinfish will get you
crawl.
on the flats.
but
You
but
ain't got a prayer.
he is like made me go buy a couple dozen shrimp in the summer, and I never really do good with it, do really good
This
with it.
last
But
year was a big.
he-
I know.
it's my
South
buddy
Shore
Jeff. He
especially.
tears it up. Like
Big
when he
on-
lived in Mirror Bay, he would just shoot out for a couple hours. You didn't want to get bait and go through all that. He just get some shrimp. Just
I got a
go.
question
burn
that
some
was,
time.
That was messaged to us, and it's a good one. Tony Garcia, he's always watching the show when he can. He's asking, when we're doing this, are there changes we make to these rigs that we're talking about if we're targeting reds, snook, or trout specifically?
I would say not necessarily the fish, but more so the area.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I guess that
Yeah.
sort of correlates. Like
Good answer.
if I'm fishing the bushes, you know, I'm probably going to be fishing for more snook, redfish, maybe some sheep's head in some deeper areas. If I'm fishing out in the open, I'm going to be probably fishing for more so redfish and trout.
Trout, yep.
And then if I'm like more bottom fishing, it's like snappers and sheep's head and stuff like that. So the rig, it doesn't necessarily change for the fish, the species, but more so the area that I'm fishing. You know, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. Sometimes this might be an alternative answer to the rig, but and I know we touched on this a little bit last week, but sometimes the size of the shrimp will change. Like if I'm going out for a day where I'm going to snapper fish, and that's the primary target, I'll downsize in shrimp, downsize in tackle. But generally, with all three of those species, those flat species, I'm going for the bigger shrimp. I want those bigger shrimp for casting, for the commotion they're making. For everything's an advantage with those bigger shrimp. Even if the snook you're going to be catching are 18 to 23 inches or smaller trout, none of those species have a hard time getting a big shrimp down.
Unless the bait shop won't separate the shrimp, some of the bait shops won't. You'll just get a variety pack, or you'll just get the assorted, deal. If they have the option, I'll buy the larger shrimp, even if I'm going to go snapper fishing, because I feel like to me I can always tear pieces of that off and do the snapper deal. But if I do want to get inshore and try to target some inshore game fish, it kind of gives me that option as well. So I'll tend to lean towards buying the bigger shrimp if I'm in a situation where I can. If not, then the old assortment, the old variety pack.
I like the variety pack myself.
It does. No, it's not bad.
I usually get medium, and I don't know. Last time I bought jumbos, I buy the medium. They either work or they don't. Travis has got a little bit more thought into it, I guess. I've done well with the mediums. It's worked. You get a bunch of them. A lot of times I'm mixing my trips up with doing some redfish with the sheep's head. Well, sheep's head, you go through a ton of shrimp. I don't really want, I guess you could break them apart. I never actually did that. But one thing I'll do is, like, we actually got 1,000 shrimp when we were going to run offshore and didn't use them because it was 5-footers. I've got like a ton of frozen shrimp in my freezer in my shed. So that's another option. The frozen shrimp seem to come off a little bit easier, but they work good for sheep's head.
Yep. Now, you just said you like the smaller shrimp and keep it whole when you're sheep's head fishing?
Yeah. I even buy, if I know I'm going sheep's head fishing, I'll buy smalls. I'll tell you the thing about sheep's head is the bigger sheep's head. Everybody says sheep's head nibble, and I have a method that works for me. It might not work for everybody else, but everybody gets on my boat. It works. When you sheep's head fish with shrimp or fiddlers or whatever you want to use, you feel little thumps. And then with little sheep's head, you keep feeling thumps and they steal your bait. With big ones, you feel thump, thump, thump in weight.
Third thump.
And then what I typically tell people to do is when you feel the weight, lift up when he starts fighting, give a couple jabs, kind of like tarpon fishing. Because if you jab it real quick right off, it's typically not in their jaw, and their jaw's real hard. It works good for me. I know some people say they stick them right off. I typically wait till you're actually fighting them, and I tell them once you're fighting them, give a couple good stabs to get that hook in there. It's to me, it's no different than a tarpon. You have a really hard mouth that you're trying to get the hook semi-set and then push through, and it works pretty good. That's how I know when I'm fishing. Okay, these sheep's head are smaller, they're bigger, and it's almost every time when I'm losing a lot of bait, we're catching the smaller sheepshead.
Mhm.
You know, when you get the bigger ones, you get more hookup ratios just because they're eating the whole shrimp.
But even in those bigger sheepshead, you still prefer the smaller whole shrimp.
Yeah,
Right.
I just like using whole shrimp. I have broke them in half when I'm running out,
Yeah.
but
Get down the nitty gritty.
yeah, when you get down to nitty gritty, you know, you gotta
Hang on.
You gotta make it
At
work,
first, those
baby.
dead ones are getting thrown in
Yeah.
the water. At the end of the day, hold on.
Well, I usually, like, if I'm doing sheepshead and doing some inshore, and, you know, I actually might try a couple jumbos based on what Travis has said about the trout. I've never actually thought that. I just used medium. I used to get jumbos and didn't catch nothing with them. I spent all this money on jumbo shrimp,
Yeah.
and I'm
The
looking
good thing
at
about
them.
the jumbos is,
You can eat
hey, they're still shrimp,
Yeah,
man. Take
man.
them bad boys
I
home
don't do
and
that. I probably should,
clean
but
the old poop chute out.
it's too much work, man.
Put 'em in the-
It's like,
Eat
Put
'em
them
when
in the
you're done,
frying
baby.
pan,
Yeah.
son.
I always say I'm going to do that in theory, and
So
then,
you have to clean the
yeah.
bottom.
You know,
Yeah,
so
it's-
we've kind of all talked about really live shrimp, right? I mean,
Yeah.
for the most part. So I'll throw something out there.
We covered shrimp.
Y'all ever heard of the old Stinky Pinky?
Yeah, it's a drag car.
Well, you take. You don't. I just see where your head's going. But there's been times when I've been out
Old
Manny,
zip
get over
tie.
here.
snapper fishing and sheepshead fishing where a fresh shrimp, whether it's live, you know, freshly broken off, but they will eat a dead, stinky pink shrimp that's sitting on the deck over a live, fresh bait.
What kind of fish?
A sheepshead or a mangrove snapper.
Yeah,
I've seen
the
it
hardest thing is keeping
happen
them on the hook,
when
because they get that
I'm not
mush.
saying they're not going to bite the other ones, but I've seen it where I've had it happen to me in the summertime where I've brought shrimp, you know, like from the wintertime, we'll freeze them. And like when our big snapper thing's going on, we're using the live baits and all that stuff. And I've brought like a little Ziploc full of frozen shrimp.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll take them and I'll throw them out on top of the cooler or something
Yeah.
and just kind of let them unfall.
Yeah.
And they'll get kind of pink and stinky. And you take a little piece of that. And I'm telling you, those white or those snappers that are coming flying in
That's
and
next show, Ken.
looking at that chuck bait, you've all seen it, where
Yeah.
they fly right in, eat a freebie, but they won't eat the guy that's
Yeah.
fresh cut. Try a dead shrimp, just
Alright.
a rotten dead
You
shrimp.
said a comment on the Publix frozen shrimp. I wonder what the cost difference on
$5 for a pound of 21 to 30 sized.
Oh,
We
Huh.
did that one year down in the Keys
Yeah.
for yellowtail. We bought a bunch of those.
Yellowtail eat anything.
And
We
we
were feeding
mixed
them
them
French
with
fries.
we mixed it with wheats
down
and
there
actually
one year.
noodles. We boiled noodles.
Oh.
Yeah, and mixed it all into a couple buckets, and we took it out there, and it worked really good actually.
You can yellowtail eat anything. I remember we were on a snorkeling trip in the Keys, and we were a little hungover, so the snorkeling trip didn't work out too well. And the captain was throwing French fries over. Had a whole school of yellowtail chummed up
Eat
by
'em
the
up.
boat. Yeah,
Yeah,
just-
when I was in Puerto Rico, they were eating all the kids were eating sandwiches.
Yeah.
They were throwing their crust in the water because what kind of kid would eat crust?
yeah.
Throw it in there. Yellowtail down there was crazy. I
But
mean,
yeah,
I've
they're
never
not like
seen
Cheetos,
anything
potato
like
chips,
Yeah.
anything. But that's on the reef. The second you get off the reef, man, those fish change a little bit. It's
Oh,
the
yeah.
craziest thing. I don't know if you guys do a lot of reef fishing, especially in South Florida and the Keys.
Yep.
But like all the public reefs, they're loaded up with yellowtail. I mean, you could pull right up, and like you said, throw hamburgers and stuff out, and they'll come right up to you. But you start getting off that reef, they're not quite as friendly. I mean, you can get them up, but it's a lot more difficult once they get off that reef. They know, they know that they're protected in that area. So,
Yeah.
When I was in Cambodia, we was catching hordoos on pineapple chunks.
Hordoos, that was the one he got us on last year.
Pineapple chunks.
Are you being serious? I don't even. I can't
Cambodia.
even. I don't even know. He always holds a straight face all the time. I don't know.
Jason's never caught one
I
of
heard-
those. He's never even seen them.
I.
What's your biggest?
What's your
Never caught
biggest?
a horseshoe?
No.
Wow.
I caught one.
After a hurricane last
Please.
year, Walmart threw out all their frozen shrimp. My
So-
buddy works in the seafood department. I ended up, wow, that's a bunch. Pancakes also. Well, I would tell you this. Fish do, I'm joking about that, but fish do eat crazy things. I caught a snook on a piece of black licorice. I know you caught a redfish on a grape.
It did big redfish.
On a grape?
Yeah, I
Grape.
was on school redfish and we kept catching. I caught like 50, and I'm like, I'm gonna throw a grape out, and I threw a grape out, and I caught a 34-inch redfish.
And I caught a snook on about a 4-inch piece of
But they're
black
just that's a reaction
We've
strike.
caught
Yeah, I
them.
mean,
Our best was a gum wrapper, like a silver, like a.
Yeah, when
know,
you're
stick-
when
you
you're
wrap
on
it
them
around the
schools
hook,
and they're
you make a
eating
little thing,
anything,
you
you
throw it
don't
out
know.
there.
What-
That's a
what's your-
reaction
these-
deal,
a dead shrimp?
dude. You gotta get more.
Oh, you see.
You gotta be experimental, man.
All right, Proby.
Yeah.
Jeez.
You
Jeez.
gotta go. Man, hey, don't you experiment?
This mate, did,
Yeah.
I mean, come
he,
on.
talk
see,
about it on-
James
when the
what?
fight's good, you
Can't
gotta,
talk about it on
Hey,
you gotta throw stuff out
James
there.
wasn't around when we did radio, and our intro said, "If we don't know, we'll make it up."
That's
Yeah.
right.
Oh, okay.
Come
Ask
on,
us a
James.
question. We don't know. We'll make
It's
it
all been
up.
covered. Green beans, pancakes, hamburgers, hot dogs, grapes. You got it's regular 4th
Hey.
of July barbecue going.
Stephen's wife caught a 20-inch trout on a gummy worm. Amberjack on a
I
Snickers
believe
bar.
that.
I
Gummy
believe
worm.
Snickers bar is good. I like that
Yeah.
one.
I know Steve gets out there and crushes fish, so I'm gonna
On
I've
Snickers
heard a
bars,
group on
obviously.
Chicken bones.
believe that
Yeah.
one. Hujo
Was
Key.
Hujo Key chumming with
There you go.
leftovers.
All right.
See?
Good deal.
So
Anything can happen, boy.
Yeah.
anything
Anything.
can
Never say
happen.
never.
Never say never.
Lesson of the day.
So what's next, man? What do we got?
Well, I mean, split shots.
Split shots.
Digging.
Yeah.
You forgot to talk about our split shots. These are always good with shrimp. They have a really, I like the name of them is very simple,
I like it. It's a
but you
very
always want to
simple.
have some split shots. These are size 4. I like what's the biggest size you have?
It's like a 2 or 1.
I like the size 2 split shots, and they sell them here at Tampa Fishing Outfitters. You have your own brand, Joyfish.
Joyfish, named after.
What size hooks?
That's
Do we
right.
cover hooks? 2-aught hooks. We got number 1
2-aught
hooks.
circle. I go down
Tried
a little bit
it?
from there. That's
Yeah.
like the biggest one I carry is a 2-aught. J
Really?
hooks.
On your boat?
No, I mean.
Oh, for this
style of
application.
fish,
Elephants
yeah.
eat small
Yeah.
hooks.
Yeah.
There are guys, man. You know, it's funny. Talk about hooks, and I'm not to get off the subject, but when I first started guiding, I used to buy the 100-pack of number 1 Mustad live bait J hooks.
Mhm.
I mean, you get 100 of them for like $10.
Yep.
And I mean, religiously, that's what I used. I mean, for the longest time, I mean, years, even before I was guiding, that's what I always used because it didn't matter if you had a little bit larger bait. It didn't matter if you had a little
Yeah,
smaller bait.
I use smaller.
And,
I rarely use a number
you know,
2.
we caught so many
or
big
2-aught.
fish. And I'm not just, but big fish, 30, 40-inch snook on number 1 J hooks.
Mhm.
Well, in theory,
And-
you want less tackle, the least amount of tackle. You're always trying to downsize your leader. You're always trying to downsize your main line for longer casts. Why not downsize your hook? If you hook the fish, I use a 1-aught year round. The only time I've went to 2-aught is I've done over the last 5 years done a lot more cut bait fishing.
Yeah.
And on cut bait, it's kind of nice to have that hook that's a little bit
Cut
bigger
bait
buried
and
in.
pinfish is what I'll add to that. If you
Yeah.
like if you're fishing live pins, on like a white bait, I'll normally be on like a. Now I'm using VMC, so it's actually a little smaller hook, but it's like a 2 to
Same
3.
with Mustang.
It's like a 2 to 3
Mhm.
circle. And then when I go to that pinfish or when I go to a larger bait, a cut bait, I'm more in that 5
I was
range.
going to say 4 or 5.
Yeah, I'm in
Yeah.
that 4 and 5 range, and
Wow.
and I talk about it all the time, but it has to do with on the pinfish, it has to do with that hook pulling out of that bait.
We're talking
So-
about bigger pinfish.
So
Like-
somebody wants to know how we keep the
Decker
trash fish from stealing your shrimp off the hook. You
You
don't.
There
That's
is
the
no-
down.
there is
You
nothing.
just experienced the downside of shrimp fishing.
Well, and here's the deal. In the type of fishery that we're using shrimp in, generally you're excited for anything to bite the hook.
Yeah.
So this time of year, the pinfish aren't quite as bad as they normally are. But you're going to
Summertime,
attract,
that's the problem.
Yeah.
Is pinfish.
Yeah.
especially the flats.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
ladyfish, if you can find a little bit warmer water and you may hit it, there might be some Spanish mackerel still lurking around.
Look at Ken's remark.
I saw that.
So you're the jokester tonight.
Ken,
All right,
Ken's
Ken.
been funny tonight.
I like it. I like a
Yeah,
little
Ken.
comedy in
I
our
like it.
show. But
Pliers or teeth to put on split shots?
Teeth.
Pliers, man.
teeth.
I'm going pliers.
Yeah.
There's one I got a chip in my tooth right here.
I'm not saying. I'm
From-
telling you how I do it. I'm not
From
telling you what I
80
should be
pound
doing.
braid and
You shouldn't be dipping
Bob
either, right?
Barnhart.
Right.
I am now Captain Chip.
Do you want advice or truth?
Yeah.
2 years ago, I
Probably
was
was
tying
asking me
80
what I
pound,
do.
Yeah.
I didn't say it was
and I
right.
went, Look, right there.
Dude,
You bit the line?
I was tightening down a knot
Yeah.
on 80, and when I did
dude,
it,
80's tough.
it just
Yeah.
it nicked my tooth. And so
Let me
now
ask you.
I'm Captain
Let me
Chip,
give you.
man.
And this is kind of a stupid question. But you're telling me you messed your tooth up. You licked the knot before you try to tighten it.
Yeah, 80.
Okay, spit it.
80.
I
Yeah.
know, but it does help.
No, 100%. I
How
tell you.
about I put spray some WD-40
Well,
on every once
I
in a
tell you what.
Joking.
The way that I've kind of got around it, because I still like with
Yeah,
bigger
pencil.
with bigger knots, I still use my teeth. But what I'll do is instead of biting it in my front teeth, I'll put it in my molars
Yeah.
over here and pull it to the side where I got a little more grip. And if I
Yeah.
chip one, it ain't quite as bad.
Well, look at that. One thing that gives you cancer faster than dip is lead.
Yeah, but we don't put lead in our mouth every hour.
I'm not. That's why I said I'm not putting the split shots in my mouth, but I'm
not buying
pinching
that.
those
I think
down.
that's a theory.
So the answer is pliers. You should use pliers.
I think you should pliers,
Mhm.
which you can
Or
get at
whatever's
fishing
available.
outfitters.
Whatever's available. I mean, my pliers are up in my console. I need it to put it on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you just hand it to your customer and say, put it on.
Yeah. Sure, that wasn't 80-pound wire.
No, no, I'm pretty. I mean, I'm positive. It was 80-pound fluoro, man. It was
Man.
just
Flow is tough too because it's a little bit
Like it didn't-
grippy and I guess spring. The line is more spring than has more spring than
I was
than
using
mono.
my front teeth.
Yeah.
80's
That's
a
the other
pain.
thing. I mean, I was using my front teeth.
Why don't you use a cleat? That's what I use a lot of times.
Yeah.
Cleat or your steering wheel.
Steering wheel.
I'll tie it off.
I always tie my hook like, which it's actually a pretty cool knot that I do. But I put the hook on the steering wheel and I tie it all on the steering wheel and I pull it down, so I never touch the hook
Yeah, I couldn't do that.
when I'm doing the hook part of it.
Yeah, you put
But
a lot of work in that.
When you do
Or not.
when you do line to
Yeah.
line, it's kind of hard to tie it off.
Right.
Like your line to line knot. Terminal tackle is not as bad, but like line to line, I tie a double uni,
Right.
Yeah.
so
Yep.
you can't really tie it off to anything. You're
Right.
pulling it in your hands.
Mhm.
I do a
So-
single uni
Where
for
you get those
tarpon.
cuts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm like deathly scarred there.
What
but
jig heads have thin hooks would you recommend? Depends on how thin of a hook you're trying to get to. I think most of like the Mission Fishing,
Yeah.
Slayer, I think they all
They're
have
pretty thick.
They do a pretty good size hook now, but if you really want to get to a thin wire, I'd look into some of the freshwater stuff.
Yeah.
To be honest with you,
I'm 100% mission fishing.
I haven't had a Z-Man makes some of the best jig heads I think around as far as the hook
The trout.
strength and well just the quality of the hook, which I think they're owners.
I think it's mustad.
Mustad,
they're
maybe it is.
mustads.
Very sharp hooks, very good. There's a lot of jig heads that when you start doing big stuff, catching big stuff on the jig heads, the hooks will bend, and they hold up, and they're very sharp and work well. I don't know how much thinner you
Mission
can go.
fishing are stout.
I don't know if I've used them.
Man.
I want to say they're the
I-
same hook. They're
man,
like
that's-
all the premier
That's
hook,
a good.
Our
all the
mustad
premier
jig
jigs
head
are
hooks.
using mustad.
I've used quite a bit of jig heads that they
Yeah, like the trout eye is a
Screwed the
mustad,
hooks up.
Slayer's I believe a
The
mustad,
hookup
and I think the
lures.
not
Mission
trout fishing, but like
their black
you know,
nickel.
Right.
like I
Yes,
use
yes.
sometimes I'll use jig heads bottom fishing,
Mhm.
and they hold up well. I've had some straighten though.
Sure.
Grab that GoPro for a second, or one of y'all grab it. I want to show people this real quick because I show my customers all the time because it comes up. I know you guys have heard it. How many hooks do you get in your hand a year? Or do you always get hooks in your hand? So here's a way to do a knot, and you were talking about tying on the steering wheel. So what I did here was I just put the hook. I kind of stuck it to our table, but normally I'd wrap this around a cup holder, whatever you can hook the hook around. And here's the knot. So you bring it through the eye of your hook. Hopefully this is gonna stay. So all I need to do is stick it one more time. So there it is. So that would be like on your steering wheel or wherever you're at. And what you do is you come around, you go one over the finger, and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Back through the loop, pull it back to you, make it wet, and boom, there's your knot.
What kind of knot is that?
And I never have to touch the hook.
What kind of knot
And
is
I
that?
tie this. To be honest with you, man, I don't know. We've been using it. My cousin taught me this knot. My cousin Brian Richards taught me this knot when we were probably 8, 9 years old.
I've never
bass fishing.
seen that before. That's what I was asking.
And
Yeah.
we used to do it because if you've ever tied a bass fishing hook, like a wide gap bass fishing hook, you get one of them in your hand, and they're easy to slip off. I mean, you got an issue, And so that's a knot that we've always used to do it, and you can always just tie it off to something. So
Yeah, I've seen that twist and up through. I've seen that method.
I have never hooked my hand tying
If
on
you
a hook.
if you actually,
no. I'm just saying when you're pulling it tight or whatever.
you know what's interesting is if you look at like those gimmicks they sell, like the hook knot tires, and you put the hook in there, it's the same deal except instead of you turning your thumb and making the
you're
line,
spinning that.
they're spinning that thing. So it's holding there, it's on a swivel, and you turn the hook like 4 times, put the
Well,
thing.
you
back
guys
there,
will just
boom.
buy anything.
I can
Just
tell
buy
you, man.
I can say with certainty,
I have
I've
been
never owned
using
one.
that knot. I do a loop knot, I do a snell knot, and that knot. Those are
Yeah.
the 3 I use. And I have never had that knot come back pigtailed. I mean, it's a solid knot. So, you know what I call it?
Not
I call it the noose knot because that's really kind of what it is. It's like a noose.
noose.
when you pull it down.
Yeah.
So, but maybe somebody out there knows another name for it, but that's what I tie.
We'll call it the
Slayer.
Travis
I have
knot.
to check out them.
Yeah,
like
I
fishing, you like
tie
doing
a loop knot and double uni and a uni knot. And sometimes I'll tie a bimini twist. But I'm typically too lazy during tarpon season to do it.
Yeah.
So I just don't. It's especially on the boat. It's a pain. With braid, you don't.
That's
Braid
right,
has
Ken.
simplified
That's right,
knots. You can get away with not doing double. Sometimes I'll do a spider hitch, which is the same thing as a bimini.
Same here. I run a spider hitch.
But I honestly,
I'm a
I quit
bimini
even.
guy,
I quit tying them, and I haven't.
Yeah.
I've rarely had. I just tied double uni knot with 60-pound braid. You just don't.
So
all
you
you
want to know
need.
something interesting? A couple of years ago, Spider Wire brought their knot breaking machine here, right? We ran 20-pound fluoro to 20-pound braid.
Who brought this?
Spider Wire.
Really?
Yeah, it was
I knew
for
it.
everyone to test out their knots. We did the FG, we did the crazy we did every knot you can think of, and we were letting people come through, tie their own knots. The knot that ran away with this was a spider hitch, uni to uni. Just doubling that braid over, just like you would with a
String?
bimini, and then just
Wow.
doing uni. That one
Well, there used to be a show, Knot Wars,
Mhm.
and the two uni knots slid together. It finally got beat by something. I can't remember what it was, but it went on and on
Well,
and
they
on and on.
A lot
they
of guys
say a
figure out that
bimini
FG
is the
knot.
I
only.
won't mess with the FG.
It takes
I've
too
watched
long to
people
tie.
mess with that.
Yeah, you got to have
It's too
something
much
simple
fun.
on a boat, especially
Yeah.
when you're on a bite. Like you don't be screwing around with a knot. Like
Yeah.
that's why I tell people, don't learn 50 knots. Learn 3 that you're really good at. Just call it a day. I mean,
That's-
Or
you
just
know.
learn the uni and
I
call
can
it a day.
tie most of my knots with like talking to a customer.
Sure.
Just
Oh yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like muscle memory.
Yep.
So you kind of get used to it. I mean, I think at this point, like where we're at, like most of the knots, they're pretty good. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Now, like, I think where knots really start to make a difference is like trolling. I don't know. Trolling and big game fishing. Like if you're
Yeah.
marlin fishing or
Yeah.
you're tuna fishing or dolphin fishing.
Splicing.
When you get those shock leaders or when you splice in not a drop leader, but a wind on leader.
Yeah.
When you start getting into that real technical stuff and you're catching hundreds of pounds, fish that are over 100-something pounds, that's when that really starts to make a difference. But with the size of fish we generally catch
I
and
would
the
just say
shock on them, it's
Yeah.
the
tie
regular
whatever
knot would
you
be
knot,
fine.
Tie it correctly.
Tie
it
what
right,
works
test
for
it.
you.
Be good at 3.
On that, man.
We got to go.
Wings.
Wing House, here we come.
Time for
we go.
Salad House.
Tony, meet us there, man. You said you were.
Come on, Tony.
All right, guys.
till next week. Hey, in the meantime, if you can, give us a share on the show. And if there's something you want us to cover on any future episodes, feel free to drop us a line and
Or
let us know.
if you want to go fishing with us,
Yeah, you can do
Give
that
us
too.
a shout.
if you want to go fishing,
Lead it off.
I want to go fishing with you.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you want to go fishing with me, it's easy.
Okay.
625-2067.
81
Knowledge Fishing Adventures.
813-727-9890. Steady Action Fishing Charters.
www.fishbyinstinct.com or 813-830-FISH.
Had to do that to us.
I had to do it.
No, you get the best
Calculation.
one. Do it.
Come on, Rick.
Come on.
What?
Website first.
Real simple.
I don't.
Sorry,
Hey.
Rick.
Real simple.
Hey, 813-601-2900 for the people.
.com.
All right. Till next week, guys. We'll see you. Tampa Fishing Outfitters Live Fishing Report.